Isn't it interesting that when we are children, we believe we can do anything? And as we get older, our self doubt just starts to creep in. And the more we try to take some action and the more we see certain results we don't want to be seeing, all that happens is that we end up just holding ourselves back. What we need to realize is that if we can start to work on our own self belief in terms of who it is that we are and what we are capable of, that can unlock so much in our personal lives. Not really just our personal lives, in our professional lives, in our relationship lives, like literally in every area of our life, we'll be able to see so much more success. So, when it comes to these different areas of your life, what is it that you can start to do to start to believe in yourself just a little bit more? And yes, at the end of the day, we know as adults the repercussions and the risks that are taken. And the older we get, the less riskier we want to take because you know what? It's very possible that things can really throw us off the rails. But understanding that if we can start to focus on what is it we can start to do today, wherever you are in life, that could be the thing that could help us out a lot. And what's interesting, a lot of times when it comes to risk, for some people it's very risky because they're guessing, they're taking a quote unquote risk. But for other people, they're just really educated and prepared and know what's going to happen. So therefore, they can try to protect themselves when things go in a downturn. You see, investing in real estate, I see this all the time. I have a certain friend of mine who literally does not believe in investing in real estate at all. It's too risky. 2008 happened, and he witnessed it, and he saw people lose money. But understanding that why those things happen and why people lost money and why people how people don't hedge themselves in terms of what can go right and what can go wrong and not being greedy, all those things can help you in order to become successful. And that's just in one area of real estate. And how many times in other areas of our lives do we want to become more successful and yet we can't because we think it's too risky. It's too risky to to leave our job. And with that, it's so interesting because on the one hand, yes, it is risky to leave your job, but on the other hand, it's also risky not to leave your job. Meaning, what would happen if you stayed in your job the rest of your life? How would your life look then? How would you feel then? Let's say your boss who you don't like, you were had to be under for the next 20, 30 years because you were scared to take the leap. And that is something that so many people don't think about. It's risky to do something, but it's also risky not to do something. And what we have to try to figure out is which one is riskier, which one is going to help us live a better life. And also, many times when we take a risk, is something like leaving a job, doesn't mean we can't ever get a similar type of job. You see, one of the things that I remember speaking to a client of mine, he was in a job where he was going to be able to be making seven figures after 10 years in that industry. Like that was the norm. Like pretty good, if you ask me. And he was already in year three. So he had his goal on to just stick it out for another 7 years, and I'm going to be making seven figures. And then he also had this idea, or really two ideas that he wanted to try out, two startup ideas that he knew that he wanted to be able to focus on. He was going to have to leave his job, and he was going to be able to focus on those full time to try to see if they could work. If they did work, he might be making over seven figures in those. It wasn't like great. Maybe one of the ideas he was going to be making more than seven figures, but the other idea he would have made a nice amount of money, but not over seven figures. And he had this debate: do I stay or do I go? My heart is not really in the job that I'm currently at, but on the other hand, I know I'm going to have some security. And I kept saying, there's another part of the equation that you're not thinking about. And he was looking at me so confused. And he said, what's that? I said, well, let's say you do leave. Let's say you stay for another year and a half. You end up holding enough expenses to hold yourself over for, 12 months, 24 months, whatever it might be. And then you go and you try the startup idea. And let's say it doesn't work out. It's like just bombs. And you lose all your money or during that time and nothing really works out. You have this degree. Like, would you technically be able to go back, not maybe to the same job, like the same company, but to a similar job in the similar industry? And he said, yeah. I'm like, so it's not really so risky because the worst comes to worst, like you're back where you are just a year or two delayed. And if it does work out, then guess what? You were so much further along and you're doing something that you want to be doing. And that is worth the risk. So we have to understand and ask ourselves, what are these different risks that we're talking about? What is that we can start to do? And when it comes to our own self-belief, for so many of us, we end up thinking about those times where we got burnt. But we have to realize that most of those times when we were younger, and younger could be 20s or our teen years, whatever it might happen, really what happened is that we just weren't prepared and we didn't know how to handle all that stuff going on. What we have to realize is how can we put ourselves in a position now to learn from those areas, to be able to move forward and take the action that we want to be taking. And for so many of us, we have the ability to be doing that. We can be doing that. But all that has to happen is that we have to start believing in ourselves. And for so many people, they can't do it. And what's interesting is that my son was in camp recently, and he started. It was the first time in camp, and I should say, the first time in a camp where there were kids older than he was, and he was in the youngest bunk. And what was interesting is that he went to camp, and one day they were playing kickball. And in the beginning of camp, the way it works is that while everybody's starting to come into camp, they have like a massive kickball game with all the campers, about 60, 70 campers in the game, in the camp. So as people trickle in, they end up having this massive kickball game. And one day he started, he came a little late and he joined the game. And he went onto one team, and there was a kid on the other team saying, "You can't play. We already started the game." And then an older kid who was really sweet, actually, was looking out for my son, said, "So what? He came late. Like, he can still play." And then my son started to go, like, "So what? Like, why not?" And for him, it was just that one line of "so what?" And I now use it with him all the time, that anytime somebody says something to you that you don't necessarily agree with, somebody's trying to bully you or push you around, just say "so what?" And it was something that was so powerful to him because he never had that tool or utensil. And when somebody older was able to show him, "Hey, buddy, all you got to do is just say this one thing," it allowed him to the strength to really believe in himself, that regardless of what the other kid said, he was able to play. And guess what? It's like the game just started. So it wasn't like a big deal. It was the end of the game and this and that. Like, he literally could have started. But what we have to realize is, like, what's our "so what"? What is something that we can start to do? What is something that we can start to say that regardless of what's going on, we have the ability to start to see that success? And for so many people, they don't see that success. And because of that, they end up just holding themselves back. And for us, we have to believe in ourselves. And there's a few areas that we can start to work on, which I want to share with you, that we can start to do. Because when it comes to our own self belief, it's really understanding, and it's the difference between confidence, self esteem, and self worth. And what we have to realize is confidence is that we can be confident in one specific area of our life, right? I could be very confident when I got to the basketball court, but when I got onto the soccer field, like I could be awful. But I have a good reason. It's because I scored one goal when I was in high school in the 3 minutes that I played, but it happened to also be on our own net. So that's why I'm petrified of soccer. Okay, it's not my fault. On the other hand, that's also that confidence. Self esteem is the idea that if we can start to become more confident in different areas of our life, we can build our esteem, our essence, our feeling about ourselves based on all the things that we're confident in, on all the successes that we've had. Our self esteem is higher. And a lot of times, not even all the successes like I won the championship or I ended up making $1 million. It's a success of just telling ourselves, like, "Hey, I wanted to do X, Y, and Z today, and I did X, Y, and Z today, and now I feel good about myself." How many of us have ever had one of those really long days that you just get into your bed at night, you're like, "Oh my gosh, it was such a long day, but I felt so amazing because I was doing so many things that I've done, I wanted to do." So like maybe you're on a trip and on a vacation, you did so many things in your wife, or maybe it was like one of those days at work where you just had like one of those massive days at work and you were able to like accomplish what is it you wanted to accomplish. And for so many of us, we have that ability to feel that way and to build our self-esteem up just by doing the things that we want to be doing. The last area is the self-worth, is the idea that, you know what, I matter. Regardless of my successes, regardless of my failures, I matter. And it's interesting because, like in Judaism, we have this idea where the reason why you matter is because you exist, it's because you're here. And for all of us, we all have a purpose on this world. And if we can start to say, "Hey, you know what? The reason why I matter, the reason why I have a self worth is because I'm living, I'm existing right now." And that's something that we need to understand. And if we can start to just say, "Inherently, I have a value to myself," that can be something that could help us to move forward. Because when the tough going goes tough, guess what? We're able to move forward and take that action. So, what is it we can start to do to allow ourselves to build ourselves up and to believe really in ourselves to see who it is that we want to be doing? So, the first thing we want to start to do is we want to start to build up the stories in our own personal life. You see, for so many people, they end up beating themselves up. And when something doesn't go right, or when they have a certain expectation of how something should be, they end up just assuming that it should be that way. And when it doesn't go that way, they end up burying themselves. They end up just beating themselves up, knocking themselves down. And what we have to realize is that if we want to be able to have a higher self-esteem, a higher self-worth, really believe in ourselves as somebody who we can do something, what we have to recognize is that we have to start to tell ourselves a more positive story in terms of what is it we're doing. And this isn't one of those things that like we have to only look at the positive and we have to ignore the negative. No, I want to understand that we want to be realistic, because if we're not realistic, and this is what Jim Rohn loves to talk about, it's not about the pitcher being half full and it's not half empty. It's half full and half empty. Just which one are we focusing on? Like, we have to recognize what's going on here. And what we have to start to do is to say, hey, which direction do we want to be taking? How's that we can start to move forward and be able to do the things that we want to be doing? And once we recognize that, that changes everything. So if we can start to move forward and to say, hey, you know what? There's certain things that are going on in my life, certain things that are going not so great, and certain things that are going great. And what I want to do is, instead of just focusing on all the negative, because it's so much easier to focus on the negative, right? Do you have any of those friends, maybe even a family member, who is just such a negative person that no matter what you're talking about, they, like, how you doing? I go, it's okay, but like I was online today at the supermarket for like an hour and a half because like somebody wasn't able to, scan their stuff through, or the credit card machine was broken, or something like that. And they're always finding the negative in life. And those types of people really suck the energy out. And what we have to realize is that we have the ability to not focus on the negative. We have the ability to focus on the positive. That's our choice. We have the ability to do that. And if we can start to understand that, then that changes everything. So for so many people, they are staying negative, but that is a choice that they are choosing. That doesn't have to be our choice. And if we can start to focus on the positive stories, even the smaller things, things that we're so appreciative of every single day, that could be something that could really help us to be able to move forward. The second thing that we want to start to do is to really start to believe in ourselves, because one of the things that people get scared about is that they think that if they mess up, like, it's over. Like, let's say you end up taking that extra job and you're not sure what is that you want to be doing. We have to realize that just because you do something, you take an action, you take that leap, you take that risk, and it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would, or the way you ideally wanted it to be working out, it doesn't mean you're a failure. If anything, like, the way you frame it changes everything. And for so many people, they end up beating themselves up and they tell themselves that the next time that I take an action like that, I'm going to mess up. So therefore, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to be safe. And what we have to realize is that it's not true. Like, you're going to be okay. Like, even like after I lost that money in the real estate deal, like, I'm okay. Like, I'm fine. Like, I can make more money, okay. Now you might say, well, Bennett, there are certain things that you can't get back, okay. We're not talking about like the 2% of things, but when you do have that ability to constantly be moving forward, that's the thing that's going to change everything. Because at the end of the day, we all have these doors lined up in front of us. And as long as we keep moving through any of the doors, we're going to get to the door that we want to get through. It's one of those things that, for me personally, I had a very hard time trying to figure out like the direction of my career. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting on the sidelines for something to pop up, until I realized, like, nobody's coming to save me. There's not going to do this one idea that I have. And even though I would get inspired, oh man, I'm going to do this thing. And then after like 2 days, I'm not interested in that anymore. Like, how do you all the time? But what I did realize is that, if I want to be able to find out what that thing is, I need to start to take the action. I need to start to make decisions, because the more decisions I can make, then the more ability I have to start to see that success. And for so many people, they don't realize that's literally all you have to do is just constantly move forward and take the action. Because if you don't take action, all that's going to happen is that you're going to start to stay in your same spot, and you're not going to see what other opportunities are out there. And it might not be the next opportunity, but it could be the 3 or 4 opportunities after that one action you take. It could be you take a job, and then you meet somebody at the job who knows somebody else who knows somebody, where you take another job, and then from that job, you end up finding somebody else who ends up helping you find the job that you want. But at the end of the day, if it never would have happened if you didn't take that first area. And the third thing that we can start to do, and this is more just really practicing. You see, how do we practice our confidence? How do we practice our self-belief? And it's similar to the idea of building our own self-esteem. It's, are we doing the things that we say we're going to be doing? Like, in our day, like, if you could pick 2 things, like, today I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go on a walk today around the block, and I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to call one person that I haven't spoken to in over 6 months. And that's all I'm going to do. And if I can do those 2 things, then it's a big win. Or maybe something is in your business life, or maybe something in your relationships, or whatever it might be, maybe your health, whatever it could be. You're picking the things that you want to be doing, because we all have an ideal schedule of what it is we want to be doing. The question is, like, why aren't we doing it? Like, why are we not doing 90% of it? Like, why is it only like, at the end of the day, I really let another day go by and just didn't make it happen? And what we have to realize that if we want to really be able to move forward and to build ourselves up and to trust ourselves, we have to start holding the word that we really want. Like the things that we want to be doing, we have to start doing. And we have to start taking those actions. And if we don't take those actions, so all that's going to happen is that we're just going to mess ourselves up. So ask yourself, what are those things? What are those daily things that if you can start to do and check your list and say, you know what, I'm really proud of myself, that can be something that could change everything. Because then you can start to believe in yourself. You can start to do the things that you want to be doing and allow yourself to become the person that you want to become and be proud of yourself. And then guess what? The more harder things that you want to take on, you still have this more belief, you have more confidence, you have a higher self-esteem because you've been doing these things that have been uncomfortable or maybe not natural to you. And slowly but surely, you end up building yourself up and you're building different areas of your life. And all of a sudden, your life in general is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm living this type of life. It's not like an easy life. I wouldn't even say tough or hard life. It's you're working for it. It's like going to the gym, like you're working out. Like, yeah, it's tough, but guess what? Like I'm getting these results. And that's something that we want. So these are such important ideas that we need to be focusing on. If you're not really working on these ideas, and it's something that you need to think about, because if you could start to believe in yourself, that can be something that can start to switch everything. And the questions you need to ask yourself is like, what is it that I'm going to be doing? How is it that I'm supposed to be moving forward? How is it that I can start to take these things upon myself to be able to move forward and to live the life that I want to be living, and to take those actions to move forward and to believe in yourself? Because if you don't believe in yourself, except for your parents or maybe it's your spouse, whatever it is, like who's going to believe in you? And the most important person that needs to believe in you is you. You have all these people who are such underdogs and literally nobody believes in them, but because they had such a belief in themselves, they achieve so much more. So what is it that you want to be doing? How is it that you want to be going about it? And if you can start to take these actions, I'm telling you, things are going to change in your own personal life. Let me know what questions you have down below. If you have any specific topic, like always, feel free to share. We'll see everybody on the next one.